Hello, everyone. My name is Simon Bogdanovich. I am the Chief Business Development Officer at Liquiditi Solutions. I'm here based in sunny Los Angeles, California. I want to thank everyone for being on with us here today. So giving you a quick background on Liquiditi Solutions. Really, the company is founded to help combat COVID-19 and offer critical support to governments and private enterprises by really streamlining the process of acquiring life-saving medical supplies and equipment. And we've developed through our suppliers and manufacturers integrated testing, tracking, and health passport, digital health solutions so that governments as well as businesses can reopen their economies in a safe and a secure way. So our mission as Liquiditi Solutions is to protect humanity from the catastrophic events of the pandemic with safety equipment, testing, and solutions that span the globe. Thank you. And now I will pass it off to Alice, who will get us into the first session of the forum. Thank you.
Okay, so now let's move along to session 3, which is titled How to Conduct Global PPE Transactions from Contact to Close. Hear from experts on what it takes to run cross-border PPE and medical equipment transactions. This session will be moderated by Lehman Bush. Mr. Bush, would you like to carry on?
Good, yeah, that's Edward Lehman. So that's my name, and thank you very much. And I'll be joined by my colleagues, Konstantinos and John Lehman. I am about more than 30 years in the life sciences industry in China, and I set up the China Association for Medical Device Industry in 1991, and the RDPAC, which is the Research-Based Foreign Pharmaceutical Industry Association. I'm managing director of Lehman Bush, and I'm also chairman of Lehman Lee & Shu Law Firm based in China.
I'm John Lehman. I'm director of Lehman Bush. Lehman Bush itself has been doing a few deals in the PPE space in the United States, Europe, and in Africa. Mainly sourcing in Asia. And I'll be speaking about how to reduce the purchasing risks, due diligence, and customs clearance.
Hi everyone. Good evening. Hello. My name is Konstantinos Hadjiannou. I'm the South China director of Lehman Bush, and during this panel, I will touch upon the importance of quality control, alternative of sourcing countries, and I will give a brief overview of the general product flow in PPE transactions.
Great. We've got a PowerPoint, so I don't know, Konstantinos, are you able to put that up there?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. You all see the screen, yes?
Yeah, very good. So we'll pass on this one. That's who we are and a little bit about us. This first slide is just to show part of this, before we get going, and the last panel was fantastic, and this is a tremendous event, and thanks for inviting us to be a part of it. But when I think about it, it's a little bit like the 3 blind men trying to assess what an elephant looks like when you talk about the PPE industry. First blind man grabs the side of the elephant and says it's a wall. Second one grabs the trunk and says, well, this must be a snake. The third one grabs the tail and said, well, it's obviously a twig or it's a long stick. All 3 of them are right and all 3 of them are wrong. And what I can say, having dealt with in the health sciences industry in Asia for the last 30 plus years on the ground, is that this is a whole new area, which is good and bad. It creates a lot of opportunities for folks. And so I'm going to give our perspective on what we see as a model PPE purchase transaction. And the first of which is that it would be a purchase order issued by the terminal buyer to an importer. The financing and profit share agreements would be in place between the importer and the trader, and the purchase funds deposited with the trader in escrow. That's the way we've done it. The trader coordinates directly with the manufacturers in many cases in China, and we'll talk about this later. Also, it could be in other countries in Southeast Asia, like was pointed out by the last panel, and signs purchasing agreements. So this is kind of the flow where a lot of people see the deals going with a model PPE purchase transaction. So on to the next slide. I don't know how to move that forward. So again, I mean, we're just going to get into the weeds here a little bit. This is the way that we do it. It doesn't mean that it's correct for everybody. And what we're trying to do, Lehman Bush and Lehman Lee and Shu, which is the law firm that I work with, is we're trying to create a system that, you know, as discussed on previous panels, there's been a lot of spot trading. There has been a lot of rushing to try to learn what's going on in the market. What we're trying to do is create a system. And so in essence, Lehman Bush is actually supplying financing for folks who need that based on purchase orders. And we're also involved with the supply side. We're also involved with the legal side, which is the Lehman Lee and Shu law firm, which has escrow agreements. A lot of what people have seen in the industry is that there has not been a lot of trust, and there's a lot of agents that are involved in this deal. This isn't trade finance and trade deals like it used to be pre-COVID-19, where you could open up letters of credit and bills of lading. This is really a manufacturer seller's market, and not the other way around. And so what we've done with this is that if you look at the green arrows, that's the cash flow. If you look at the red, those are the agreements, and the black is the product. So typically in our situation, Lehman Bush would have an agreement with the buyer. Lehman Bush would then purchase the agreement with the manufacturer. We'd help supply that. Again, this is just an example. We've been involved where other people are helping to do the supply, and we cooperate with them as well. But typically this is the way we move forward. The financing agreement we'd have between the bank and Lehman Bush. So we have, just so all the folks on the call know, or on the conference here, is about a $250 million revolving line of credit, which we're extending for people in the PPE area. A lot of this is not problematic from a supply side, usually in many instances. A lot of times it's not a problem of getting purchase orders, but there's been a problem with financing. And so that's what we're trying to address in the system that we're talking about here with our financing model. The bank then, once we've got that in place, they deposit the funds to be able to have Lehman Bush purchase those funds in the law firm escrow, as you can see down there. And the escrow pays directly to the manufacturer at the behest of Lehman Bush. Again, we're working with partners to be able to do that. So we're open to discussion, and we have cooperated every step of the way with folks. Then the manufacturer ships the product to the buyer pays Lehman Bush, and then Lehman Bush pays back the bank and then distributes out to agents or whatever else under that escrow agreement. So as folks know, this has been largely a cash business, 100% upfront. In all my years as a lawyer, I've never heard these terminologies like proof of funds and proof of life until this PPE industry was started. I've heard about it in movies with regards to kidnappings and negotiation, but not with regards to trade finance. And so we're sort of in a new field, which presents both threats and opportunities. And the way we do the funding protocols, for anybody who might be interested, obviously contact us, and we're willing to talk about funding PPE and try to cooperate in any way, shape, or form. We would typically require a valid purchase order where Lehman Bush would be either the designee or the paymaster. So and this was brought up in the last panel, so the state of Texas might have certain parameters on their purchase orders. The state of Illinois might have certain parameters. But so we would either be in there as a Lehman Bush as a paymaster or designee, and we would then get pro forma contracts with regards to dealing. This is on the manufacturing side. Have to take a look at that, and we would be able to identify who the beneficial owners, and that we're following KYC, OECD, the anti-money laundering, the Patriot Act, and other kinds of documents you'd have in any kind of financial transaction. This seems very complicated, but it's pretty straightforward. And then we wind up working with our bank, which is providing the line of credit to Lehman Bush. And once it's satisfied, we go forward with the transaction. That might happen, just so you know about the length of the funding protocols, would be about, it might be as long as 7 business days, but generally speaking, we try to make it less. And then the next, and then the way, just so everyone knows what an escrow agreement is, may or may not, there might be some lawyers on the line here or not, but an escrow account is a tender financing terms where the bank is opening under the name of the borrower, which in our instance would be Lehman Bush, and then the bank is a signatory to that. And an escrow account differs from other joint bank accounts and ordinary bank accounts because the lender is the only authorized signatory with transacting powers. But the reason I bring this up, and you can all Wikipedia what an escrow agreement is if you don't know, but is that we've been using these escrow agreements in cases with PPE where there's been a large number of agents and a lot of people who don't know one another, and they're asking for cash in advance. And so in essence, we're able to provide the funding and then use the escrow services to be able to manage the risk. And then I think that will segue into our next panelist, which is John Lehman, talking about reducing the purchasing risks.
Thank you, Edward. Yeah, so the typical Chinese PPE factory will seek to load all of the risk onto the foreign buyer. And they can get away with this because there is, a global shortage in PPE. And it's truly a seller's market, at this point in time. And you better be sure that you're, dealing with a legitimate, reputable supplier or manufacturer. This is why we recommend that all our clients and people that we work with on these deals, have lawyers to conduct due diligence. We're very fortunate, to work with Mr. Edward Lehman here, who is managing director of Lehman & Shu. So it really helps streamline, our entire process. So if you want your future PPE orders to get through China Customs, you need to be certain of the following: that your paperwork is all in line, that there are no missing pieces, that your PPE product is of good quality and is obviously not counterfeit. Can do this by SGS inspection or testing, and the country to which the PPE product can be legally sent, that particular PPE product from China can legally receive it, which next moves me to due diligence, and how to reduce your risks by learning more about the legitimacy and reputation of the company from which you are looking to buy PPE. Some simple things you can do are to check the company website for professionalism and relevance to the product you will be buying. Another thing you can do if your end user or buyer is in the United States, you can check the FDA websites for certifications, make sure everything's in line there. Another thing you can do is verify the registered capital of the company. Higher official registered capital is suggestive of a legitimate company, less likely to be involved in scams or dishonest behavior because they have more on the line. There's more of that. There's more for them to lose. You can confirm the business scope. Every company in China has an approved business scope, which defines the type of business activities it may legally engage in. The business scope should include manufacturer or scale of the type of product that you are purchasing. The company that is manufacturing the PPE product you'll be buying from in China is licensed to make that particular product. There may be additional licenses required for medical devices such as PPE or personal respirator masks. Lastly, a simple factory visit is critical in confirming the professionalism and true manufacturing capacity of the supplier, which leads me to slide 8, customs clearance. So how to reduce the risk of your PPE products being held up at customs. China Customs is cracking down like never before on PPE leaving China. They have much more than just a watchful eye on all products leaving the country. You will require a collection of documentation in order to pass customs inspection for the export out of China. A joint declaration signed by the manufacturer and by the exporter is one of them. A filed online application for customs clearance. A business license of manufacturer required to prove whether or not the company is on the white list or not. A medical device production license of the manufacturer. A medical device production filing certificate. Medical device registration certificate or medical device operation license of the exporting company. A business license of the exporting company. Then it's followed by a bill of loading, a purchase invoice and packing list, purchase and sale agreements for products to be exported, product testing, evaluation report, and lastly, a letter of commitment for quality and safety. If your PPE does not qualify under all of the above, no matter when you bought it, it will get blocked from leaving China. Now, this leads me to the next slide about PPE contracts. So how to draft a PPE contract that will reduce your risks, including risk-reducing contract terms. So having a contract directly with the factory where possible. Inspect, to inspect the product at the factory. It can be done by a third-party inspection service such as SGS. Payment only after inspection. Try and avoid blind prepayment. Draft the contract for the supplier reimbursement in the event a product fails to leave China customs clearance. Put in a clause about liquidated damages where possible. English and Chinese. You need to make sure you include the Chinese name of the company to really make sure everything is binding. And also, you need to verify the signing authority for the China company. And lastly, it needs to be executed with an official company seal or CHOP. And if you tick all of the above, everything should be looking in your favor. Thank you very much. Now I pass on to my colleague Konstantinos.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, John. Thank you. So quality control, as you probably know, it's a very important part of the transaction because it may lead or may not lead to a payment or not a payment from either side of the chain. If the product fails to pass quality control and you have already paid a deposit, you will need to find a way to either return the products or work upon them. So it's a very important part to have inserted in the contracts, as John was saying. And at the same time, the product quality will determine whether you're going to receive final payment from your end buyer. Few points on that. We've all seen recently a lot of issues with masks or other products on the quality control around the world from China and other parts. Some issues we can bring forward in order to help here and what we've been working with clients. First of all, starting, you have a differentiation between pre-shipment and during production inspection. Normally, everyone is going and suggests to do an inspection pre-shipment, so when product is already done. But we recommend to perform inspection on-site during the production schedule. even when you are receiving the raw materials. So this way you can actually have an eye and have a saying during the whole chain of manufacturing, right? From the reception of the goods until the end of the production. Another important point is increase your sample sizes. Most inspection companies use the ISO 28559-1 specification that basically determines 3 levels of samples: level 1, 2, and 3, and different AQA levels at the same time to determine the error there. Of course, the higher level, the more thorough the inspection will be. So using a level 3 whenever is possible may be the best course to secure the quality with PPE. At the same time, do as many visual checks as possible when you are in the factory, when you are visiting, doing the inspection. A simple visual look to the sample size will determine very easy problems like loose threading or other potentials there. This includes the inspection of the packaging and of each individual unit in the sample size. Of course, product tests are very important. Not always are possible, and it might take too much time with the PPE, but this doesn't mean that you cannot perform them. A good test list includes simple checks your inspector or yourself can do to catch major issues. For instance, in some products we were working on for clients on KN95 masks, you can easily check waterproofing, dye penetration, and the airflow yourself, right? The airflow, for instance, by trying to blow a lighter through the mask and see whether there is a penetration of the air. It's indicative things you can do to look whether the product is on the line that you are requesting. In-house lab tests, if it's not possible to send the products on a third party, on a certified third-party lab, you may be able to conduct the test inside the facilities of your client, always having one of your personnel or third-party staff to overview that, and you can specify the similar tests to those done on a lab when you're booking your inspection. Another important part to remember is that all the products, they might need re-sterilization and general confirmation afterwards, or repacking, or the damaged goods by the inspection need to be kind of repaired by the factory. And all those, the important take from the quality control is try to foresee what might happen or the problems they might exist, so you can include them beforehand in all the legal documents together with the different tolerances and so on. So from the beginning of the process, all the different parties are well aware what to expect. So even if your product needs to be accepted by a client, or the product needs to be accepted for you from a supplier, you have a concrete guideline where to base this examination of the products and on your relationship with the counterparties. We're going to touch upon now a bit the sourcing and the abilities beyond China. We know that during the peak of the COVID epidemic, most of the sourcing was focused on China. But however, as the previous panel was also mentioning, Southeast Asian countries have ramped up production of PPE over the last 90 days. And we in Lehman Bush have identified several ASEAN countries with growing PPE production capabilities. Very briefly on Southeast Asia, mainly Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. Cambodia on gloves, gowns, and hair covers, same as Indonesia. Malaysia and Thailand more focused on gloves, and Vietnam, gloves, gowns, hair covers, and masks. we've seen lately interesting reusable masks from Vietnam as well. An important fact is that in April, US AID identified 180 potential Vietnamese suppliers with high capacity production facilities for the manufacturing of medical gowns, as well as gloves, face masks, and other face protective gear as well. So overall, they have a larger percentage of exports when it comes to gloves and gowns, as opposed to other PPE material. Other important points to take into consideration in these countries is the tariff schemes with major destination markets like Europe or US might be more preferable than China, for instance. And as far as we know, the using of financial instruments are currently more welcome in those countries, like letter of credit, or even local financing by local financial institutions like Vietnamese banks or others. This will lead us a bit on the a kind of a quick wrap up of the product flow from the manufacturing to the end destination. Of course, the first step starts with the manufacturing facility. There is where you can, from the very beginning, you can make your visit. Afterwards, you have the inspection when you receive the materials, the during production inspection, and before loading. Afterwards, the goods are probably going and moved to the storage, to the port for storage area, for storage, custom clearance, and inspection if that takes there. Here it's important, as John was mentioning before you are leaving the factory and before starting the custom clearance, to be sure you have all the paperwork in line. You have all the necessary documentations for export, joint declarations, and so on, so you don't delay your cargo or you don't have any problems at customs. At this point as well, and in relation with the third step, which is loading on the vessel or on the airport, is be well planned in advance about your ETD, your ETA, when you want to arrive on the destination country. That's important in order to book in advance the vessel and the flights. During the epidemic and even until now, a lot of the air cargo shipments, the space is kind of tight. So if you are speaking about high volume cargo, probably you will need a big space. So it's well to be planned on advance. Of course, after the loading and departure, the bill of landing is issued. The vessel is going to the destination. The bill of lading, together with all the commercial invoice, packing lists, and the rest of items, can be used as, of course, the proof of departure, that in many cases can be used for payment issues, can be used as a proof for financial settlements, can be used as well as a depository document in case of depository conclusions with other financial institutions. And then you have the arrival in the destination country. At that point, we consider very important to be able to have all the documents in line also that the destination country will require to custom clear, apart from the shipping documents. In the case, for instance, in Europe, all the CE certificates or the private declaration of conformities well in advance. So if there's any problem or any issue, you can take action before the vessel is arriving or upon arrival, so you don't incur in problems. And the same with the US, with FDA FDA, CDC, and all the rest of the local authorities. Of course, then after arrival and the custom clearance, the goods are delivered to the client, to the storage for their final inspection, and then the delivery to the different facilities, points of sale or point of usage, medical facilities, and so on. So the key here is in every step to be able to have everything, to foresee, the risks, what might perhaps go wrong, and have all the documentation beforehand, and all of this flow and all of these documentations, insert them in your negotiations and during the transaction itself, either with the buyer, either with the seller or the supplier or the vendor, and the buyer on the other side. So the real transaction and the real product flow to go as smooth as possible, and avoid any problems.
Great. Thank you, Konstantinos. Just want to let you guys know we have 1 minute left before moving on to. Thank you.
Okay, great. I mean, let me just say thank you very much on behalf of our group, and thank you, Konstantinos, thank you, John. What we tried to do is, it's again a huge, wide topic. It's the wild, wild west. I think the opportunity is there. I've been, like I said, involved in decades of this kind of work, and this is sort of a game changer, and it's shifted the paradigm with regards to it. For those of you who are involved in this PPE work like we are, it turns out to be about 18-hour days, and the volume of deals are great. The number of unicorns being chased are also a larger number, and a lot of these deals go pear-shaped because of it. What we tried to do today was just give a broad overview from our humble perspective as one of the three blind men assessing the elephant. As far as folks that there was a number of questions that came to me. I'll try to answer them personally, or Konstantinos or John will. The financing can be approved based on the PO if it's to the state, for those that are looking for financing, but just address it to a state or to a government, but also to a corporation. It's just a little bit more time consuming with regards to that. So I think we're right up against it with time, and I'd like to thank Simon for the opportunity for our group to be able to give this short presentation.
No, thank you all. This has been a fantastic panel. So really, really appreciate all of you.